Hello, BookTube. I have a tag for you. It's been a while since I did a tag. It's the page 112 tag, which, for those of you who don't know, was created by Sean the Book Maniac, whose channel you should all subscribe to if you don't already. And he adapted it from a French literary prize where the judges of the long list are given only page 112 of each candidate book. And it's from that page that they determine whether or not they want to see more of any of the books in question. And the assumption is, which I think is largely true, that the opening part of any manuscript is, especially fiction, is heavily coned over by the author, by the author's beta readers, if they're smart enough to have them, by the agent, by editors, and perhaps a little more invidiously, but I don't think any less accurately, that kind of close, calmed attention falls off after that. So that if you look at page 112 of a manuscript, you're going to see more of what the author's like when it's just them and their talent and you. And so the idea here is that you take 3 books off your shelf that you haven't read, preferably in the same rough genre, and go to page 112 and read that, and then discuss, because it's interactive. We want to know what you think. And the best way to simulate the French prize is if somebody else picks your pages for you. And Sean did that once I'd whined at him enough. So he said, I've got the Lenovo yoga book here, which I can't live without anymore. I find it impossible to believe. Those penguin shelves back there, that's where this thing sat for about a year. I can't believe that. I can't live without it now. I use it for everything. But I've never tried it for something like this. So we're going to see if I can do it on here. Sean sent me, I saw in my email, he sent me 3 excerpts and then the identifications of them. And we're going to go through the excerpts first, and then I'll look at the identifications and see how I do. So let's see here. Here is excerpt number 1. Your beautiful sister happens to have the undivided attention of Porter Hamilton, of the very well-to-do Chicago Hamiltons, lumber millionaires. He was absolutely smitten with her at the Harvard-Williams football game, and he's already called on her once at Vassar. And did my sister see him at Vassar? Said Frederick, without looking at Anita. At Frederick's change in tone, Lottie checked Anita's expression, but Anita was sitting motionless, praying for Lottie to stop speaking. Well, she did, said Lottie, with less zeal. But he came unannounced, and no letter, no telegram. He just tromped into the visitor's parlor and demanded to see her. Demanded in a gentlemanly fashion. Your sister couldn't leave him there to rot now, could she? Said Lottie. No, I suppose she couldn't, said Frederick, lowering his voice. My, said Lottie, fanning herself with a linen napkin. She placed one of her monocles on her left. She placed one of her monocles on her left eye for effect. Okay, all right. There's a lot of hand-waving in this gesture. First of all, you don't place a monocle on an eye. You place a monocle in an eye. So that's why I had no idea what was going on there. But absolutely smitten. And the name-dropping, the Harvard-Williams football game, then he calls on her at Vassar. I don't know. From this excerpt, I'm assuming, although I know I'm assuming incorrectly, that I'm not supposed to like these people. They all come across as insufferable. They want each other to stop talking. They're preening. They're name-dropping. I certainly would not read even page 113 of this if left to my own devices, unless it was a brand new release that I had to read. So let's try excerpt number 2 and see if we do any better. This is excerpt number 2. James nominates his boy Alexander to the See of St. Andrews, his late brother's benefice, and collects massive fees. The 10-year-old is sent to Italy to study with no less a scholar than Erasmus. Oh, Sean. Erasmus, who visited my brother Harry and was impressed by his learning. Thomas More brought him, that Erasmus, for a pair of little Scots bastards. The philosopher visited the Royal English Court and came to us in our nursery at Elton and exchanged poetry with my brother Harry. We were suitable pupils for such a great man. But James is blind to rank and blind to merit. He insists that his bastards go to Padua to study, and nothing will persuade him that this is to raise them too high. I know he is mistaken, For all that he calls me unfit to rule, I know some things. I have seen my father haunted by boys, Plantagenet boys, even one who called himself a Plantagenet prince. Okay. All right, well, those of you who don't know why I burst out laughing, I've made something of a little study of Erasmus, the great Dutch humanist, and I feel certain that his appearance in this excerpt is not an accident. And of course, the appearance in the excerpt gives away the identity of virtually everyone involved. Harry here is the young King Henry VIII, who met Erasmus. They did not exchange poetry, but the James, therefore, has to be King James. And therefore, that narrows drastically the list of people who can be narrating this in the first person. And I believe, I don't recognize the passage, but I believe I recognize the cadence. The quick fragments, the single word sentences. Erasmus, for a pair of little Scots bastards. He is mistaken. For all he calls me unfit to rule, I know some things. It's very immediate. It's very grippy. It's very anachronistic. No one who could have been alive, no sister of King Henry would ever have written English anything like this. So it's historical fiction that's very jagged, very quick, very fragmentary, very dialogue heavy. Even in the parts that are simply being related to you, it sounds like someone's talking to you. And that cadence is very familiar. So I don't have any. I will find out. Sean very wisely in the email where he lists the identity of the authors, he puts a line up top saying scroll way down because he doesn't want you to accidentally see them when you look at the subject line of the email. So I don't know who these are, but I'm going to go out on a limb and guess this is Philippa Gregory. That is so similar to the prose style of hers that made The Other Boleyn Girl so famous. No one else writes like that. No one else writes historical fiction like that, good or bad. I myself think it's as much bad as good. But at least you would probably keep reading because it's so immediate. Unlike the last excerpt, which I don't think I would. And then we'll do excerpt number 3, and then we'll see how I do. So here's excerpt number 3, and it looks like it's all a quote. As she couldn't control her sphincter and constantly soiled herself. Oh, Sean, you're a basket of roses, aren't you? As she couldn't control her sphincter and constantly soiled herself, men could go with her for half price. Another girl became pregnant and performed on a mattress with a hole in it to fit her belly into. In her case, the clients paid more because they thought that fucking a pregnant woman cured gonorrhea. When the pimps wanted new faces, they sold us to other brothels, and so we went down and down until we reached the depths of hell. I was saved by fire and a man who took pity on me. One night there was a blaze that spread to several houses in the neighborhood. Journalists arrived with their cameras, and so the police couldn't turn a blind eye. They arrested us girls shivering in the street, but not one of the damn pimps or clients. We appeared on TV, where we were accused of being depraved and responsible for all the filth that occurred in Arkansas. They were going to deport us, but a cop I knew helped me escape and got me a passport. Okay. Well, the one positive of this excerpt is it makes the first one look like Shakespeare. That was wretched. In pretty much every way that it could be. It's not only wretched in terms of writing, it's also not believable. It's bad in every way. It makes you concentrate solely on the author, the person of, not the speech, the person speaking here, but the author of the book, who I'm judging just from this little one page is a raving egomaniac with no talent who's built their entire career on those two facts, that they're a raving egomaniac and that they have no talent. But let's go through here and see some of the most egregious problems here. Some of the literary infelicities we can chalk up to the narrator, who's probably not very well educated. But when the pimps wanted new faces, they sold us to other brothels, and so we went down and down until we reached the depths of hell. So either that's the writer being inept because the writer's not very articulate main character is suddenly speaking in poetry, or it's the writer being an insensitive a-hole by pulling out a melodramatic cliche when we're talking about prostitution. And not only that, but the depths of exploitative prostitution. So it's one or the other, and both those choices are horrible. And also, what was that other one? Journalists arrived with their cameras, and so the police couldn't turn a blind eye to a blaze that spreads over many houses, like the police would if the journalists weren't there. I don't see anything. So a quarter of the building, there's a quarter of the neighborhood's burning up. I don't see anything. I don't care. And also, we appeared on TV where we were accused of being depraved and responsible for all the filth that occurred in the city. Does that sound to you like something that TV news does? The TV journalists do? Do they say there was a fire at a whorehouse in town the other day, and they are, of course, the source of all deprivation and sin? Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. They were going to deport us, but a cop I know helped me escape and get a passport. Does that sound believable to you? Sound like something a cop could do or would do? The third excerpt, to use highly technical, critical language, stinks. So let's see who the culprits are, shall we? First of all, let's admit that none of those was particularly good. The middle one had a kind of raw, grab you by the lapels energy, but not anything that you couldn't discard in a minute. The energy was the only thing it had going for it. It was crammed full of anachronisms of the type that, if I'm right, and it's Philippa Gregory, it's what she's built her whole career on. And the other two are worthless to the point of being negligible. You can just forget that your eyes ever saw them. So let's see who they are. I have to scroll all the way down here. Okay, number one, about Mimsy and Chad at their Ivy League schools, is The Gilded Years by Karen Tanabe. I don't know that book, and I don't know that author, and I don't want to know either one of them. Number two is number two was Three Sisters, Three Queens by Philippa Gregory. Not one of her slightly more considered novels. Three Sisters, Three Queens I haven't read, and it was dashed off. So it isn't the same thing as one of her bigger, slightly more studied Tudor novels, but still it gives you a good idea of what you're either missing or skipping when it comes to Philippa Gregory. And then the third one, all right. The third one was The Japanese Lover by Isabel Allende, who I consider to be one of the most overrated authors of the 20th century, or perhaps of all time. So it doesn't surprise me that even page 112 would be so crappy that any random graduate student pulled out of any writing workshop anywhere in the Western world could do better. I don't think she's ever written a good book. All of her books are just overheated and sour souffles of cliche and overwriting. And something of my diagnosis is true. Isabel Allende has traded a lot on a cult following and on a certain level of untouchability. I never understood why she's considered a major literary figure, and that excerpt certainly didn't do anything to change my mind. So there you go, BookTube. Sorry that couldn't have been a little more palatable. That was the page 112 tag, and I'm gonna there isn't really an effective way to tag people in a video. That's why Sean has sort of characterized it as an anti-tag or a quasi-tag or whatever. There isn't any really real way to do that. The only way to do it, which I strongly encourage that we all do, is to go to your own shelves and pick 3 books, type out page 112 from each of them, and send them to somebody you want to do this. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that to a couple of people, and we'll see how they respond if they do at all. But in the meantime, I'm going to sign off for now, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.